Good afternoon. How wonderfully punctual you are. I think we're actually about 45 seconds early starting. My name is Kim Campbell, and I have the pleasure to be a trustee of ICSR. And you saw me in the video where, for some reason or other, the sound makes me sound like a chipmunk, so I'm happy to speak to you in my own voice today. I just wanted to make a brief comment about some of the remarks raised in our first two panels, or from you in the audience, and particularly about the fact that we had a panel of Palestinians and a panel of Israelis. It's sort of amusing for us to be, for anyone to suggest that we've somehow been segregating people, since the whole thrust of ICSR's work has been to bring Israelis and Palestinians together. But the purpose of this morning was really to allow some appreciation of nuances and division and different perspectives from within the two groups. And I think one of the great mistakes that one can make in trying to address these issues is to assume a kind of uniformity or agreement within parties, within negotiating groups, within sides to a conflict. And they are often as nuanced and maybe as fractious as those between the major contending groups. And I think this morning we had an opportunity to see some really wonderful and articulate personalities. I suppose if there's any criticism, it might be that the 8 people that you heard on the panels, or the more 9 people that you heard on the panels, were altogether too reasonable. Perhaps we should find people who are less reasonable. I'd also say that in terms of the suggestion that perhaps we're too optimistic, I think we are highly realist about the difficulties of this challenge. But I think the whole purpose, and I think the reason you're all here, is because however pessimistic we might be, however pessimistic our realism might make us, we know at the end of the day, and we heard this from our panelists, at the end of the day there is no choice but someday, somehow, to resolve the issue and to make peace in the Middle East. And I think if we felt that there was nothing that reasonable people could do in terms of understanding the issue and contributing to it, we'd all just go out onto Waterloo Bridge and hold hands and jump into the river, because what would be the point? And I think it is because we feel that there is something to be gained. And that really is a wonderful way perhaps to start off this panel this afternoon, because in this panel we are going to hear from 2 young women who represent our commitment to the future and our belief that leadership in the future in this region is fundamental, and that perhaps one of the most important things one can do is to try and encourage, support, help to enrich the experience of those who will down the line be making the future in the Middle East. And even if there were a peace agreement tonight, if somebody called in and said, guess what? The peace agreement has just been signed, it would only be the beginning of the work. We'd still need the same kind of intelligent, thoughtful, imaginative, adventuresome, courageous leadership to build a future. And I think what was interesting this morning was to hear some of the visions of those who live in the region about what that future might be. You heard this morning from 2 of the Atkin Fellows, and last night the Atkin Fellows met together in a closed session to talk about some of the issues in the conference. And today we're going to begin our afternoon session with hearing a report from 2 of the fellows of their discussions last night. The 2 Atkin Fellows are Odelia Englander and Alia Al-Qadi. Odelia Englander was the Atkin Fellow in spring of 2009, and she is now press attaché at the Israeli Embassy here in the United Kingdom. She holds a Bachelor's of Art in Government Diplomacy and Strategy from the Interdisciplinary Center in Herzliya, which is of course one of the partners of ICSR, and an MA in Diplomacy and Conflict Studies. She is a former member of the One Voice movement and was a member of the Middle East Youth Delegation to the annual Petra Conference of Nobel laureates hosted by His Majesty King Abdullah II. Alia Al-Qadi joined ICSR as an Atkin Fellow in spring of 2010, and she is now studying for a PhD at Cambridge University. She holds a BA in Politics from the American University of Beirut in Lebanon and an MA in International Studies from SOAS, the School of Oriental and African Studies, here in London. Alia previously worked at the Royal Hashemite Court in Jordan as a press officer at the Media and Communication Division and at the Center for Strategic Studies at the University of Jordan on domestic security policy research in Jordan. I'd like to turn first of all to Odelia Englander to report to you on the deliberations of that wonderful group of Atkin Fellows. Odelia, you have the floor.
Just a quick correction. I'm not yet the press attaché of the Israeli embassy. I'm the press officer at the press department. But thank you, I'm very honored.
You've been promoted.
And on that note, I'm very honored to be here and share the.
I think maybe you just need to get a little closer to you. You have a higher.
Yes, is that better? Yeah.
Pull it close to you if you pretend you're a rock star.
To continue on being honored, I'm very honored to be here today and share a podium with the former Prime Minister of Canada, the first female Prime Minister of Canada, and with my Jordanian colleague, Alia. In many ways, bringing the former Prime Minister of Canada to host this talk and to moderate this session gives you an example of what is the Atkin Fellowship is all about. Last night, we had the closed deliberations of the Atkin Fellowship, Atkin Fellows. For some, this is the second consecutive year that we participate in the annual Atkin Conference, and for some, yesterday was the first touch-base meeting. The session was moderated by Sir Andrew Burns. His astonishing experience in foreign policy, diplomacy, and conflict resolution was very much evaluated yesterday, and he served as the UK ambassador to Israel in a very important time for our region during the Oslo Accords. We decided to divide the session into two parts to discuss about our own individual experience of the Atkin Fellowship, and also to come up with some topics that go in alignment with today's conference. Some of the topics we raised yesterday were can the issue of a Palestinian state be outlined without reconciliation between the Palestinian factions? What is a bigger obstacle, moratorium or construction? What needs to be done on the Israeli side, on the Palestinian side, in the Arab world and within the international community? And the peace camp, is that a forgotten illusion? What happened to the peace camp? I'll start by talking about the conclusions that we all raised from our own personal experience from the Atkin Fellowship, as well as the collective experience of this fellowship incepted and brought to us by, thanks to the generosity of Celia and Edward Atkin. At first I thought, personally speaking, that coming to London would give me a neutral environment to engage in a dialogue with my Palestinian counterpart, Odeh Abu Karsh. However, London is far from being a neutral environment. It's not only a hub for international media, it's also a hub for international students who come to London to acquire higher education and then to go back to their home countries and perhaps become part of the decision-making process. Having said that, the 4 months that we spend here, no up and downs. First, we have to bring into consideration all the predetermined perceptions that we come here. As an Israeli, I can tell you that it was only when I was 24 that I first met a Palestinian from the territories. And coming here, I spent 4 months with Odeh. And the first encounter was psychologically very difficult, but at the end, after 4 months, we become to respect each other, to understand each other's narrative, and to listen, which is very much important.